The day has finally come for Tony to settle his debt with Danny Ocean. But before they can do anything, Tony's boss pays him a visit. And when he hears about what Tony is up to, he threatens to take away everything that Tony has ever worked for. Mafia boss's final warning. Tony was nervous as he sat down across from Danny Ocean. This was it. The moment of truth had arrived. Now Tony understood that he was in deep shit. And there was no way out of this situation. He had stolen from the wrong person. Now Danny Ocean was here to collect what he was owed. It hadn't been easy for Danny to track down Tony, but he had gotten wind that Tony had gone into business with one of his old partners, a man named Frankie Carbone. Frankie was a small-time crook who had recently tried to turn things around. However, he had been unsuccessful and had been forced back to doing crimes. This made him an easy target for Danny Ocean to blackmail, and Danny used this tactic to find out where Tony was hiding. Tony had never thought he would be in this position, but he had made some really bad decisions recently. Things had started going downhill for him when his wife left him. She took their kids and almost all of his money. At this point, Tony felt desperate. He had nothing to lose, so he decided to steal from the only person he could think of, Danny Ocean. The problem was, he didn't know that Danny was one of the most dangerous men in the country. When Danny found out about Tony's betrayal, he assembled his crew and went after Tony. They followed him to the Bahamas, where he had tried to lay low, but Danny was relentless and eventually cornered Tony in his hotel room. Now Tony had nowhere to go. All he could do was hope that Danny would cut him some slack, but he knew that this was unlikely. Danny sat down next to Tony, and they stared at each other for a few seconds without saying a word. Finally, Danny broke the silence. "You know why I'm here, Tony?" I know, Danny," Tony replied. "I owe you money. I'm sorry." Danny leaned closer to Tony. "You know how much I hate liars." Tony nodded his head slowly. "So, what do you want from me?" Danny asked. "I just want my money, Tony. That's all I want. I don't have it all with me, Danny." "I'm sorry," Tony said, hoping that Danny would buy this lie. Danny looked at Tony for a few seconds, trying to figure out if he was telling the truth. "All right, Tony, let's say that I believe you. What are you going to do to pay me back?" I don't know," Tony lied. Danny stood up from his seat. "I think you do, Tony. I think you know exactly what you're going to do to pay me back." Danny started to walk towards the door. "Danny, please, I'm sorry," Tony begged. Danny stopped walking and turned around to face Tony. "Sorry doesn't solve anything, Tony." "I know that, Danny. I'm willing to do anything to make it up to you," Tony said. Danny looked at Tony for a few seconds. He knew that he had Tony right where he wanted him. "Well, that sounds nice, Tony, but I don't want your apologies. I want my money. I swear I don't have it with me, Danny." "I promise," Tony insisted. Danny walked over to Tony and grabbed him by the collar of his shirt. "Don't lie to me, Tony. I know you have it with you." "Danny, please," Tony pleaded. "You don't want to do this." Danny tightened his grip on Tony's collar. "Oh, do I not?" Danny asked. "What are you going to do, Tony? You're going to hit me? It's not like I'm scared of you." "Danny, please," Tony begged. "I can make it up to you." Danny threw Tony to the ground and stepped on his chest. "No, you're going to do what I tell you to do," Danny said. "And then, if I feel like it, I might pay you back what you owe me." "But Danny, I've got nothing," Tony said. Danny stood up and walked towards the door. "That's for me to know," he replied. "You do what I tell you to do and you will be okay." After Danny left Tony's hotel room, he called one of his crew members and told him to meet him downstairs. The crew member arrived shortly and Danny gave him an envelope. "Take this to Tony," Danny said. "Make sure he gets it." The crew member took the envelope and walked out of the room. As soon as the door closed behind the crew member, a smile appeared on Danny's face. He knew exactly what he was going to do with Tony. Meanwhile, Tony was still lying on the ground when he heard a knock on the door. He looked up and saw that it was the same crew member who had delivered the envelope. The crew member opened the envelope and took out a piece of paper. "What's this?" Tony asked. The crew member handed the paper to Tony. "Read it," he said. Tony unfolded the paper and started reading. "Frankie is dead," the note read. "If you don't do what Danny says, the next person he'll kill will be someone you love." Tony's heart sank. He knew that Danny meant business. He had killed Frankie. If Tony didn't do what Danny said, then someone else he loved would die. "Where's Danny?" Tony yelled. "Tell him I'll do whatever he wants." The crew member shook his head. "I don't know where he is, but he wants you to come to this address," the crew member said. "He'll be waiting for you." The crew member handed Tony an envelope with an address inside. "Go on," the crew member said. Get out of here.
Okay.
Tony took the envelope and left the hotel room. He didn't know what was going to happen, but he was determined to do whatever it took to protect himself and the people he loved. When Tony arrived at the address, he saw that it was an abandoned warehouse. He didn't know what to do, but he knew that he had to go inside. As soon as he stepped inside, he saw Danny waiting for him. You came alone? Danny asked. Yeah, I didn't bring anyone with me because I don't want them to get hurt, Tony replied. Good, Danny said. That was smart. Danny walked over to Tony and grabbed him by the collar of his shirt. I'm going to ask you one more time, Tony. Where is it? I don't have it, Danny, Tony lied. Danny punched Tony in the gut. Don't lie to me, Tony. I know you have it with you. Danny, please, Tony begged. I'm sorry. Danny threw Tony to the ground and started to walk away. Danny, please, Tony yelled. I'll do whatever you want. Danny stopped walking and turned around to face Tony. That's very generous of you, Tony, but I don't need your money anymore. Instead, I'm going to take something from you. What? What do you mean? Tony asked. I'm going to take away everything you've ever worked for, Danny replied. I'm going to destroy your business, Tony. I'm going to ruin your life. No, Danny, please, Tony begged. Danny walked over to Tony and started to kick him in the ribs. You should have thought of that before you tried to screw me, Tony. Tony curled up in a ball on the floor as Danny continued to beat him. Danny kicked Tony in the head. You're a dead man, Tony, Danny said. There's no way out of this, Tony. Danny kept kicking and punching Tony until he was unconscious. Danny stood up and looked down at Tony. This is what you get for screwing with Danny Ocean, he said. Danny walked out of the warehouse, leaving Tony lying on the floor in a pool of his own blood. Danny got into his car and drove away. As Danny drove away, he couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. He had finally gotten his revenge on Tony. He had taken everything from him. Now, Tony would never be able to make an honest dollar again. Danny smiled to himself as he drove away from the warehouse.